This video is going to be about creating users and then adding and loading the default values you have created as a manager into onto that user so they can so the dashboard can be populated and they won't have to go through all the categories and add them in there. They're already in there. Now you can add these categories for the user on all tabs. They're available. So the first thing you do is you create a user. So you click on Setup. The first page that comes up is Application Settings. Click on Users, and then over here on the right side you create a new user. In this case we're going to create a simple user, Test. Give it a password and confirm the password. And we're going to make it an internal user. If we left it at external, the user wouldn't be able to do anything with their dashboard, but just view what you had already set up for them. Some people will create an internal user, set it all up, and then go back and change it to external so it can't be changed at all. An external user doesn't even have the setup button, so they can't see any of this stuff. So we're going to make it an internal so we can work with it. We're going to give it officer productivity or officer access, and what that does is give the user access to this button or the officer productivity. I'm going to add it. So here we have the user we just created, named Test, and then there's the manager role, Randy2. So the first thing you do is not only the pages that have things set up can you load into memory. Let me show you how that looks. Dates is the first one you can look at, and you can see two things here. You can see all the dates, and then you can see the set default. So the set default loads up into memory the items listed below here, and the load default loads these set values onto a new user. So load the default dates as set up by the manager. Set the dates as the default for your agency. So if we'd create a bunch of date ranges, we'd go over here and we would set this default range into memory. If I created another one, another date range, I would set the default again because it wouldn't be on there, because this is just a snapshot of what's in there now. Again, it's on all these buttons, and so you can load this into memory for every one of the pages, and then you put it on the user that you want. So in this case we have Test. Test is blank. It has nothing loaded. So all you do is you click on Load the Defaults, and now Test is populated. You want to be careful not to load the default groups up and overwrite what you have in the have already saved, because you'll overwrite them. But anyway, so now Test has all these groups. So let's go on another one. So under Incidents, Incident Groups, we have all these categories set up. If I was to go over to Test, it'd be blank. And so I'll go back to the manager role here, and you see load the default groups, set the default groups. And so if I had made changes in here, I would set the default groups like this. It'll tell me that it's set them into memory and they're ready to go. And then I would come back on the test user and load those default groups, and now it's populated. And here they are. So we didn't have to recreate them for that user. You can just load them onto the user. So if we go to offenses and we see under offense groups the same thing, Test is blank. So let me show you what that looks like if we were to log out and come back in. So we're going to log out. We'll come back in as Test. Wow, hold on. Log in. Take a minute, for this user's never logged into the dashboard, and so it's got to bring up the pages. So when we look at the date ranges, it's got those date ranges. If we look at the incidents, it has incident information because we loaded up this user. But if we were to look at offenses, it would be blank, and probably natures and statutes and citations. because we haven't loaded up the dashboard with the default values that were set up. And you may have a user where you don't set up the default values. They have a very narrow scope of what they want to look for, and so they will just create those categories and not load the defaults. So this is the test dashboard here. We'll log back out and come back in as the manager. Log in. And then we would proceed with those other pages through the setup to load them in the memory. So we'll let it churn away here. So we'll go to setup. And remember, we did incidents, and you can tell you did it by clicking in here, going in here, and then looking at that new user, and there they are. It's set up. So let's go to offenses, offense groups. There are all the part A, part B, and everything like that. We'll go to the test page, or the test user, and you see in this one, we'll load is there, and we'll load them up, and there they are. It's the same with natures. Come over to natures, and in this one, you see there's no load the default, and that's because this page has not been loaded up by the manager. So we're going to set the default groups, go OK, and now they're in there. And now I'm going to refresh that page, and now you'll see the load default group has appeared. Go down to our test subject and load the default groups. And you do that throughout all of these. I mean, if you're in evidence settings, you see the set. Right now it's got one of them in there. If I was set the group in the, and you'll notice that this user does not have anything in it. So we'll go back to the groups. We'll set this default group of all in the memory. We'll go back to the user we created, test, and we will hold on. Go back in, and now we have the load. So we'll go back into test, hit the load, and we'll get one group, all. And that's how that works. But another thing, under your incidents and incident groups, once you get something set up, let's say you've spent a lot of time on this and you've set up your violent crime, robbery, and you also want that violent crime over in the offense group, over here. So what you would do, you don't have to recreate them. You'd go to wherever that is, whatever the category is that you've put in here. In this case, we want robbery, violent crimes, and you click this button. And what that does is move, it suggests you want to move it to offenses in part A, and robbery is a part A, and you want to move it to offenses. You could move it to roll call, and you just confirm your copy. And now the offense group has a, should have, have a robbery, a copy of the robbery here. And so in this particular case, I'm going to delete it because it's a copy. It didn't move over because I hadn't created this parent group in offenses called violent crimes. So let me do that again. So we'll come in here and you see there's, go back. You create and edit a group, add a new row, and this is going to be violent crimes. We'll say, yeah, and I want to calculate the crime rate, so I'll save it. And now we have that in there. So now when I go back over to incidents, and I go to incident groups, and I want to put robbery into it, I click here. Offense, part A, no, I want it in violent crimes, and confirm my copy. So what I did is I sent the one I had set up from here over to offenses. So let's go see if it's there. And there it is right there. So in this case, it's not on this list. And so what I'd want to do is set the defaults again into memory. Because right now, if I was to load up test, it would have it. But it wouldn't be able to load that violent crimes because I didn't load that's not in memory again. So that's how you copy over one category to another page, and then you just delete it. Don't want it over there. So again, that's how you set up a user. That's how you create the user. That's how you set them up without doing a lot of work on it. You copy those categories onto that user. I mean, a lot of times you'll click this and there'll be a whole bunch of users down here. So you have to click on each one of them and go, yep, set it into memory, or load the default groups anyway. Set is to put them in the computer. Load is to take them out of the computer and put them on the user. Other than that, that's about all there is on users. You can create as many as you want. It doesn't really matter. And they can have as many categories as they want. So if you need any help, please give me a call. Thank you.